Let's get straight to it. Number 1, hyperindependence. You don't ask for help, you figure things out alone. You've built a life where you don't need anyone for anything, and on the surface that looks impressive. People admire your self-sufficiency, but you know the truth underneath. You're not independent by choice, you're independent by necessity. As a child, when you reached out and no one responded, when you cried and no one came, when you needed comfort and found emptiness, your developing brain made a brutal calculation. Emotional needs are dangerous, so it shut them down. You learn not to need, not because you're strong, but because needing and not receiving is more painful than not needing at all. Attachment research shows that children who experience emotional neglect often develop what's called dismissive avoidant attachment. Your nervous system learned that relying on others leads to disappointment, so it built walls that keep everyone out. Now, as an adult, when someone offers help, your first instinct is refusal. When someone gets close, your body tenses. When someone asks what you need, you go blank because you genuinely don't know anymore. You've trained yourself so thoroughly to not need that the circuitry for receiving care has atrophied. This hyperindependence isn't confidence, it's a survival mechanism. And the cost is that you're carrying weight you were never meant to carry alone, but you can't put it down because letting someone else hold it feels more terrifying than collapsing under it. Number 2, emotional numbness. People say you're distant, unfeeling, hard to read. They accuse you of not caring when the truth is you care so much it would destroy you if you let yourself feel it fully, so you don't. You've developed what psychology calls emotional blunting, a defense mechanism where your brain dampens emotional intensity to protect you from overwhelm. When you were young and your emotions went unwitnessed, when your pain was ignored, when your joy was met with indifference, your nervous system learned that feelings are useless. They don't change anything, they don't bring comfort, they just hurt. So your brain started turning down the volume. Neuroscience shows that chronic emotional neglect can lead to decreased activity in the anterior cingulate cortex, the region responsible for emotional awareness and regulation. You're not choosing to be numb, your brain is protecting you the only way it knows how. The problem is you can't selectively numb. When you shut down pain, you also shut down joy. When you protect yourself from hurt, you also block out love. So you move through life in a muted state, observing your own emotions from a distance, knowing you should feel something but experiencing it like it's happening to someone else. Others see this as strength or stoicism, but you know it's not strength, it's absence. And the loneliest part is that no one sees how hard you're working just to feel anything at all. Number 3, you default to emotional self-reliance. You were the child who didn't cry when you fell, who comforted yourself when you were scared, who learned to regulate your own emotions because no one else was going to do it for you. And now, as an adult, you pride yourself on not being needy, on handling your problems alone, on never burdening anyone. But developmental psychology reveals something painful. Children aren't supposed to self-soothe at that level. They're supposed to co-regulate with a caregiver who mirrors their emotions, helps them make sense of feelings, and teaches them that emotional distress is temporary and manageable. You didn't get that, so you became your own parent. You developed what psychologists call precocious emotional autonomy. The issue is that true emotional maturity isn't self-sufficiency. It's interdependence. It's knowing when to lean on others and trusting they'll hold you. But you never learned that trust. So you handle everything alone, not because you're capable, but because asking for support triggers the old wound of asking and receiving nothing. You've built an identity around not needing anyone, and it keeps you safe, but it also keeps you isolated. Because the truth is, you do need people. You just can't let yourself admit it. And that contradiction exhausts you in ways you can't explain to anyone, because admitting you're tired of being strong would require the exact vulnerability you've spent your life avoiding. Number 4, hypervigilance. You notice everything. The slight shift in someone's voice, the micro-expression that flashes across their face, the pause before they answer. You're constantly scanning for signs that someone is upset, disappointed, or pulling away. And you do this unconsciously, automatically, because your childhood taught you that emotional shifts are dangerous. When a caregiver's mood was unpredictable, when affection appeared and disappeared without warning, when you never knew which version of them you'd get, your brain developed a survival skill. Hyper-awareness of emotional cues. You became an expert at reading people so you could brace for impact. This is what trauma specialists call hypervigilance, a state where your nervous system is constantly scanning for threat. But the threat isn't physical, it's emotional. You're watching for the moment someone decides you're too much, not enough, or no longer worth their time, and this vigilance is exhausting. You can't relax into relationships because you're always monitoring them, always looking for the crack, the sign, the warning that they're about to leave. Others think you're overthinking or insecure. But what you're actually doing is trying to control an outcome you learned early was inevitable. You're trying to see abandonment coming so it doesn't blindside you the way it did when you were small and had no defense against it. Number 5, love feels like a threat. When someone is kind to you, your first instinct isn't gratitude, it's suspicion. You don't trust it, you wait for the cost, the expectation, the moment they reveal why they were being nice. Because in your experience, care isn't free. It comes with conditions, it has to be earned. And even when you earn it, it can vanish without explanation. So when someone offers you unconditional love, your nervous system doesn't recognize it. It feels foreign, uncomfortable, even threatening. Psychologists call this phenomenon disorganized attachment, where your system both craves and fears closeness. Neurologically, this happens because your brain's reward pathways, the circuits that should light up in response to warmth and affection, are underdeveloped. When you didn't receive consistent emotional nourishment as a child, those pathways didn't strengthen. So now, as an adult, receiving care doesn't feel good. It feels confusing. Your body doesn't know what to do with it. You deflect compliments. You minimize your needs. You push away the exact thing you're starving for because accepting it requires vulnerability you're not sure you can survive. And the cruelest part is that people interpret this as you not wanting love, when the truth is you want it so badly it terrifies you. You just don't believe you're allowed to have it without it destroying you. Number 6. Being low maintenance is self-erasure. You don't complain, you don't ask for much. You're easy to be around because you don't rock the boat. People love this about you. They call you chill, flexible, drama-free. But underneath, you're not being low maintenance by choice. You're being invisible by design. As a child, when your needs were ignored or met with frustration, you learned that having needs makes you a burden, so you erased them. You became small, quiet, accommodating. You learned to take up as little space as possible so that people wouldn't have a reason to leave. Psychology recognizes this as a fawn response, one of the lesser-known trauma responses where you people-please and self-abandon to maintain connection. You don't state preferences because you genuinely believe your preferences don't matter. You don't set boundaries because you're terrified that having boundaries makes you difficult. You've convinced yourself that being easy is how you earn the right to be loved. But what you've actually done is teach people that you don't have needs. And when you finally do express a need, it feels so foreign, so uncomfortable that you immediately apologize for it. You're not low maintenance, you're self-erasing. And the tragedy is that you're disappearing to make room for people who wouldn't leave if you took up space. You just don't believe that yet. Number 7, profound emotional endurance. You've been through more than most people will ever know and you act like it's nothing. You normalize pain, you minimize struggle. When people share their problems, you listen with empathy, but when it's your turn, you shrug it off. You've developed what psychologists call normalized trauma response, where you've carried pain for so long it feels like baseline existence. You don't recognize how much you've survived because survival is all you've ever known. You think everyone feels this way, distant from themselves, heavy with unnamed grief, exhausted by existence, but they don't. Most people didn't grow up learning to function without emotional oxygen. What you call normal, psychology calls resilience under chronic adversity. You've been running on empty for so long you think that's how life works. And that endurance is extraordinary, but it's also costing you. Because you're so used to surviving that you don't know how to live. You don't know what it feels like to be nourished instead of just not starving, to be held instead of just not falling apart, to rest instead of just not collapsing. You've built an entire identity around endurance, and it's kept you alive, but it's also kept you from recognizing that you deserve more than survival. You deserve softness, care, ease. But asking for those things requires believing you're worth them. And that belief was stolen from you before you had words to name what you were losing. I'll be sharing more videos like this on emotional growth, psychology, and self-understanding. Subscribe if